Cam, start the show.
Hollywood! From Los Angeles and Nashville.
That's where
Get
I
ready
live.
to go behind the scenes with Entertainment News. What happens when you pair a director,
What happens?
a voice
Tell us.
actor in a world, and some of the most interesting people in entertainment? You're about to find out.
About to find out. It is
Yes,
us.
we are.
It is I. It is Jason.
Forsooth.
Man, Jason,
Yes, how can I help you?
are looking especially manly today.
This is true. What is it in particular? No, you got a real man beard. I've got
I
like
don't
the
know
child's
about, hey,
play beard.
I found out something really cool. Hold on.
Oh, it's gonna hold it. If you hold,
It's gonna wait. Hold on. I gotta
you
get
can
back
literally
over it.
hold a pencil in your.
I can
this
hold
is
a
great.
pencil in this.
People
This
come
is
to our people
it's
come to our
getting
show just so they can see
too
your
much.
beard. Hold a pencil. You have
Can-
a man bun too.
Well, no, I don't.
No,
not really,
that is a
not
man
really.
bun.
It is not
I
a man bun.
just
It is not
saw-
a man bun.
I saw a man,
A man
bun.
bun comes up here. This is a little, ponytail, whatever.
Okay,
I
you have a
don't know.
chick bun. I saw a chick bun
Chick
and a
bun.
beard that holds pencils.
And I'm getting a little too, speaking of in the future, we were going to talk about running things off of tool batteries, right?
Yes.
And
Are we going to talk about that today?
We're not going to talk about that today. But if you all know anything about tools and Ryobi, I've
Yes.
been using the Ryobi batteries to do this, and I think I'm going a little crazy on the Ryobi stuff.
You have Ryobi
the
glasses,
colors, right? The
Ryobi
colors
pens,
of it's all it's crazy. I wish I had
Yes.
a Ryobi.
For those of you who
tool
don't know,
up
we're
here.
going to attempt to convert a Ryobi battery so that it can power your Red camera or your video equipment.
Exactly.
Ryobi batteries are considerably cheaper than buying like your standard V-mount batteries. So
Much cheaper.
I think you're going to want to stay tuned and find out. I don't know. I don't know when we're doing it exactly, but that's going to be in an upcoming episode.
We're working on it.
Yes. Okay. So we are about to start part 2. In case you missed it last week, we had visual effects. I guess artists, but I like to call them all visual effects. And I think we're going to have Brad on here in a second and tell me how do you qualify the different areas, but visual effects magicians, I like to call them. And if you missed last week, you don't want to go back and check it out because he was talking about visual effects.
That's right.
What
up
it
here.
does. Compositing. Yeah. You can compositing and how you can, how that works in this world. So we're going to bring him on and welcome to part 2 of your experience on Entertainment Dudes. We hope the last one was enjoyable because we had fun.
Well, you haven't kicked me out yet, so I figure like we're doing good.
We're
doing
cruising.
Yeah.
We're doing good. So I guess just to start us off this week, I there's so many different types of things you can do in visual effects. So describe exactly what you do, and then what other kinds of things can you do in visual effects? Maybe compositing isn't your thing. What else is there?
Yeah, God, there's so many things. So I mean, for an example, I started out as an animator, and I it's that thing of like, when you're in a group project, you get stuck doing the thing all yourself.
Mhm.
I found myself like finishing shots, and then like slowly I was like, oh, I like putting the things together more than I actually like sometimes doing the thing. So I'm like, maybe compositing's a thing. But yeah, so in terms of like the pipeline and post, a lot of different disciplines. My end of it is I'm a compositor. So that is the person who is ultimately responsible for grabbing all of the elements within a scene or that need to be added to a scene or removed from a scene. And you're the one that's kind of got the final hands on finishing the shot out to where it gets sent to the client and then they approve it or kick it back for notes, things like that. But the other disciplines that I know in each studio, each post house is a little bit different on their specialties. Currently, I'm at a company called Crafty Apes, and so we're a post-secondary finishing house. But I mean, we do a lot of 2D kind of solve. So it's like cleanup work, removing things out of frames and shots that were necessarily meant to be in there, like like crew or like just random things or just creative things like that, or just adding things in. But in terms of the other people that I work with, we have everybody from like CG artists who are the ones that can create anything virtually, and then they hand it off to us, and then we integrate it. Then also working with CG artists, you have lighters who their job is to light the thing and actually make it look like it's going to go in the scene that I'm going to get the stuff for, and then integrate it finally. And sometimes, and a lot of times, the CG artist and the lighter might even be the same person. So, there's a specialty within a specialty for that. Animators are amazing, creative, wacky people. And we work with those a lot too, that they also work in tandem with CG, that if you have, like an animal that needs to move a certain way, or even just, like on my reel, there's a CG football flying through the air that somebody had to animate and actually make it look appealing versus just like a ball that's flipping around. So there's a lot of creative decisions that kind of go into that side of things. And then, the larger house is even more specialized. So you have like map painters who do like set extensions and kind of create all the elements that we can kind of pull from to add and enhance environments. Oh God, the list, it goes down. You have like effects artists who are doing like particle simulations and like environmental effects. So like, like all the flame, throwing like fireballs and all those things. Like basically like take a shot, and every one of the things that are part of that thing is a job.
Amazing.
You have to make things look better than reality.
Yeah, it's all about enhancement, and it comes down to like, with visual effects, they're at their best when they're not necessarily like, because not necessarily like the foreground, or like, if it's just the effect, if there's no context with it, it can kind of fall flat. But when we're enhancing things that are shot practically, that's kind of where we do our better work. But but again, there's some things that, like, if we had dragons, like I would go film a dragon, but we don't. So that's where it's like the visual effect does become the thing, as long as it's, again, servicing the story and the scene to propel whatever's happening.
So what is it going to take for us to be able to comp out the screen from your glasses and the glare from Cam's glasses for these two episodes?
Hold on. This is where things need to be fixed practically. Let me just tilt these up a little bit. There we go.
Cam's
How about that?
fixed.
I should have done that.
Mine are going to be at least a case of Guinness.
One case of Guinness. Excellent. Is there an address we can send this Guinness to?
Yes. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, next question.
What is something you would tell somebody that is interested in pursuing this career? What advice would you give them as to where to start, what to do, how to get into it?
Man, there's so much of that too. First, it would just be go and play. I mean, it's like any other art form, whether it be, like voice acting to directing to I get to play with. It's like the more life that you get to go out and experience, it's going to inform your art. And so, being a fan of film, one, if you want to work on this stuff, actually, and maybe enjoy the product, because, I've met plenty of artists that, like, they work on this stuff, but they don't watch it. They don't consume it. They just like, it's like, oh, it's a job. And I'm like, it's kind of like missing the point in my opinion. Like, it's, for me, it's like, I used to be an EMT. And so my kind of way out of EMS, even though, I don't regret it, it was like, visual effects was like, I would get off shift, and we used to run at some agencies, we'd run 48-hour shifts. And so I'd be off of that. I'd go home and I'd be on, looking at, tutorials on like how to do whatever.
Right.
So it really
That's
is.
so cool. And there's nothing you can't learn online. Like I would say, just switch it real quick. Is just, I think about Unreal Engine, how a lot of that is like all the tutorials they have on there, and how that's kind of shifting a lot of the ideas about how, at least how I'm focusing on production in some ways. And there's a lot of tutorials for even director side about how to use this to tell stories, this tool. And how much are you noticing that shift is I've noticed that a lot of visual effects is shifting to the front end of production, because you're generating digital assets that we're going to shoot against. So you're being brought onto the project a lot earlier now than ever before, because of the nature of the change in the pipeline. Have you started noticing that? Or
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, to kind of finish up on Cam's question, just to really
sure,
quick,
please.
What I would suggest in terms of like getting a start, there are some really great websites out there. Like I like all of our junior artists, I push on. It's a site called FX PhD. The dope thing about it, there's a lot of dope things about it, but it's actually like people currently still in the industry that teach. So you're not getting kind of like older information.
Okay.
So the tutorials, it covers the breadth of the whole pipeline, whether you want to be a lighter, a CG artist, a comper, an animator, a model texturer, whatever you want to do. FX PhDs usually got a course on it, but they also give you full access and unrestricted access to most of the programs we use in the industry. So it's, you can get your Nuke, you can get, your Mocha. They don't have Adobe's. That's the only thing. But Adobe's so cheap that like,
right,
you can pay your $40 and get your Adobe subscription with all the apps. But the stuff that, that we really use at this level of the industry. So like Houdini for like simulation stuff, they have that on there. So like with all of our juniors, like I push them on it because, like we talked about earlier, the cost of Nuke is stupid.
Yeah.
And they know it, so they can charge whatever they want. And, God bless them because they're business and, they got to stay in business. But, the Nuke Indie license that they have isn't as nearly as comprehensive to what the full Nuke is that we would use to train on stuff. So I would look at things like that. But that's usually the first website I send people to is just, hit that one up and you're going to get a good start. But beyond that, it's just, being open to, to exploring it, to playing and realizing that most of what we do, it's like Edison and a light bulb. We fail more than we actually figure out what we're doing. So you kind of got to, get a little bit, thicker skin and kind of be like, okay, I know I'm going to suck at this, but I'm going to figure it out at some point, and hopefully it's still within budget, and within my time frame.
Do you ever accidentally discover something, when you're going through a process, and then you just figure something out by mistake? And what's that like?
Oh my God. It's most of the time it's like, I'm like, why didn't I figure that out 3 hours ago? It's always the thing that it's always an obvious thing that you're like, I'm an idiot. And so it's like, it's self-deprecating most of the time.
Constantly keeps you humble.
Literally. It's like, there was a button there that I could have clicked 4 hours ago that would have saved me. Okay. Yeah. I'd be like, I'm an idiot. Okay. But that's the great thing about like the industry too, is that people are really willing to share. And it's like, you're going to learn something every day if you go in with an open mind. And, it really is that it's an industry that, as you guys know, like all this entertainment stuff, like you're going to lifelong student. You're never going to figure out all of it. And if you do, go, make a game or something. I don't even know. But yeah, so it really is a thing. But then jumping back, Jason, to your thing about like the post, it's been really interesting to see that shift, especially with more information coming out about the volume and things like that over at ILM. You can kind of start to see companies that have figured out that, oh, this is a game changer, especially with Unreal being free. And granted, ILM's version, I'm sure, is proprietary, unique to them to a point, but they're essentially using the same version of Unreal that you or I or anybody could download for free.
Mm-hmm.
It's just,
they just released 5.1 too now. So, and the character animations, the backgrounds, and there's a huge library of like an ever expanding library of backgrounds, content, assets. Yeah. And they really, really look real. Like a lot of them, they sell great. And I think the combination, the trick is going to be, I like to go for realistic. I love realistic looking graphics. I think, to me, Andor, the newest film for Star Wars, is just crushing it with their visual effects. I can't tell. I don't know where the background stops or the foreground is. And it doesn't feel like a volume. It doesn't feel like there's a clear wall there. So I think the trick with the volume is going to be, how do I generate that same feel as a Lifetime so there's not like clearly a wall? And that's foreground assets, middle ground assets. How far away can you shoot from the screen? I know there's a lot of new tech coming out right now that's also enables you to do 3D without glasses. And so some of those new screens can project up to 12 feet off of the screen, and you can't tell. You can look at it from 270 degrees. So that kind of tech's going to change it too. But I don't know, the Andor, that real feel mixed with the realistic animation, I love it. Like, I'm sold. Like, that's what I love. That's what I want,
And I go back and look at those behind the scenes stuff anytime Disney Plus releases. Like, I'm like, glued to my TV because seeing that. And but it's like a tool like anything else. So the big mistake is to assume that it's an all-encompassing solve. And it's because you have to treat it like you're in a CG package like Maya or like a Houdini, to where using sky domes would be the good analogy is that you're lighting all this practically with the volume, but you still need set lighting. You still need, things to integrate on set to help enhance that. And so that's where it'll be interesting, kind of a shift to see, like, I heard somebody kind of make just a comment about, like, everybody's going to have this in their garage in 10 years. And like, you might, but is it going to be, ILM quality? Probably not. But, again, it's like, it's one tool within the arsenal to capture that. So like, yeah, so you're getting that thing to where you don't know. I mean, it's completely seamless of like, what is on the volume wall versus like, what's happening, and Cassian's running around and all that stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I can't. I can't tell. I mean, you've been doing it a bunch. Can you tell? I'm like, I just like, oh my gosh, I can't tell.
Sometimes I can, like, that's the pain in the ass, is that, like, I like to,
yeah, for you.
Yeah.
flip my switch off because I like stupid movies. Like, sometimes you just need something dumb,
Oh yeah, of
right?
course.
And like, but it's like, what gets me is like, it's usually bad green screen, blue screen, green stuff. Like, it's like car comps, it's like even the
Right.
one on my reel that I threw on there, I look at it like, cause it's the final shot, and I'm like, that didn't look like that when I handed it off. So it's like, you got to realize that once you hand something off to a post, like a colorist,
Right.
it doesn't always look the way that, it got approved. And so, it's one of those things that, we got a couple of projects that we worked on that I'm not going to totally name names, but the colorist decided not to use any of the mats that we had created for our rooftop shots. And so it drastically changed the look of what we had done, because we had done some really beautiful cinematic work, and it looked like a really bad green screen by the end of it.
Oh,
and it's
gosh.
really just because they just chose not to use the mat that is now pretty much like any kind of like a key or anything you're that able to cut out. You're usually asked that, like, to provide that mat, so that way the colorist can actually like do it properly. So
yeah, so do you color the mats first? Like, how do you work that? Because if I do a shot and I give it to you, I've colored my shot. I usually do like hopefully a LUT or something. At least you can get an idea for a show look. That goes over to you, so you have an idea of what we're working off of. Then you generate your assets. Do you color those yourselves, or do you send those? Does that go to the colorist, or what do you do with your assets?
So
kind of in that workflow.
I think it depends on the verbiage of what you're counting as an asset. So like the normal pipeline for us is that, yes, we have a plate with a show LUT or a shot LUT that's specific to what that look is going to be final, and we work off of that. So the raw plate, you can, like, I'll occasionally work off the raw plate, but it's
not
like
rare though, right?
Rare. Like it's that, like, you don't do it, but you got to know when you need to do it to do it. But I mean, and it's very few exceptions from what I really found out. But like in theory, you should be looking at that final LUT, so that way you're not having to calculate like what that's going to look like at the end of it.
Yeah, and even if your terms of lighting, like if you're adding lights to the shot, or you're adding like do you add color temperature to those lights if you're adding for comps to match, or do you just give a straight light that's,
Well, it depends on what you're doing and what the task is. I mean, like, I color correct things all the time, but I'm also, again, I'm viewing through that final LUT.
Yeah.
So everything I'm doing is to match that. So it's, it's not a simple yes or a no. It's, if even like with CG, like, so like a couple of the shots on the reel that from the Peripheral, it's like, I am having to go in and, like, even though the lighter and the CG artists have done their thing, I'm having to go back in and still adjust all of their lighting work to fit, whatever's not working in the scene.
Is that in your reel?
It is, yeah. It's actually.
Oh, here, I'll bring it up. Here we go.
Hold up.
Where
should be pretty. It's not. I think it should be the very beginning.
Okay.
All right.
We got to go back a ways. Yeah. So here we go. So these are a couple of CG shots from.
Okay.
And if
I remember his little his device there.
Yeah. So the dope thing about that's actually a practical motorcycle that they built.
Oh, cool.
So that whole thing actually detaches and attaches, and it drives around. So like it's neat to see. But yeah, so for these shots, I mean, obviously, the actor has all of his limbs. So for these, it was task out beyond some basic cleanup that's happening around the scene. Thankfully, actually, also there was some outsourced stuff that I didn't have to worry about on my own. So again, it's that collaborative kind of a thing. But Primarily for that shot, it was just literally integrating the CG stumps, and then the lighting on them when I first got them. And depending on how a deep dive you want to go on that I mean, when you're lighting something, you want to emulate real world, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So for this one, there wasn't anything blocking like upper body areas. And so all the lighting was basically as if it was just limbs.
Mm.
So you're getting really kind of harsh, different kind of shadows and contours. So within Nuke, you basically have your CG passes, which have all of those different, different kind of like, I mean, it's like, like spec passes and shadow passes. And so all whatever you're lumping into there. And so it's my job to take them out, shuffle them as I need them, and then kind of make the image actually like fit with what's actually happening within the scene. And so like you hope that you get a lot of different passes and a lot of different information, because it's again, it's that thing of like the more data you have to manipulate what you're trying to do, the better off the shot's going to be on this one. And yeah, and this one was crazy too, because it ended up being, even with the CG stump, like that leg wobble, like it hadn't been animated on the stump, and so I had to go in there and do some 2D tricks to actually animate that on top of just what was already there. But yeah, but those shots I was actually really proud of.
Oh, cool. Now this one was taking a lens reflection out of the window, wasn't it?
So yeah, this is actually the lens and crew.
Oh, right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole camera crew. That was a tricky shot too, because it's like an onion. You're having to build from the back,
okay,
and then build to the front, and then replace all that stuff.
Wow.
But yeah, you can see, I mean, all of that.
Yeah, all of that in there.
Especially with like the lights, how they had them going on set. Like, I had to rebuild the back window, his arm, the door, his body, his front arm, the windshield, coming into the door window, and then the door itself. So it's
now
like,
that would have been easier if they like had no glass in there and you were to add glass, right? I mean, than what you had to do.
I mean, that would certainly be an option. But I think sometimes just fake glass can look like fake glass.
Okay. Okay.
Just with the way that, if you look at the back mirror compared to like the front mirror, the way that the light is going to hit it, unless you're actually looking at like a practical version of that to kind of get your reference.
Okay.
My brain isn't going to necessarily calculate like what that actually should look like. So it's kind of that balance of like, what's going to be the better look at the end of the day, having something practical that you might have to do some cleanup on, or just, throw CG at it and then raise your budget too.
Right.
But that shot, that was a pretty gnarly one. I was proud how that came out. And like this shot, we also had a couple other artists working on the background stuff. So there was a huge crane, screen right behind that fence that another artist removed. And then my soup on the very, very back wall of that barn or building, there was a bunch of stuff that he'd removed before I even touched the shot. So again, it's that like we're working in tandem with each other to do chunks to, get it out the door as fast as we can. Because this one also, if I remember correctly, we had a short turnaround time. It was like 2 days that we had to crank that out. So I mean, when a turnaround like that, you're kind of throwing people at it to see who can kind of knock what out, And then this one, this was actually an interesting one. So we do a lot of what's called split screen comps. And that's basically you take two versions of a shot and you blend them together. The problem being on this one is that cat on the screen right, the lower. The editor, this is where the crawdads sing, but the editor wanted the cat to move in a specific way. So instead of letting the cat just be a cat, I had to go in there and manually, through different morphing techniques, get the cat to work. And this was another one that, I was even having a hard time with it. So my supervisor jumped on and he and I were tag teaming it, because we'd get a version that we were like, this works. And then we'd send it off and they'd be like, yeah, no, I don't like the way the tail flips here or the head, and so it went through a lot of revisions, and the two of us were just like, it's a cat, just let it be a cat. So, but the end, like, no one's going to know that except for me, right. The group. So it's just, it's like that little funny, like, hey, remember that cat that we did that, we both wanted to drain our liquor cabinets over? So, but I mean, you can't tell. And this one is actually tricky too. So this was, I had to rebuild that entire background.
Oh,
So
wow.
this was another split comp that the young the character's name is Kaya, and so the actor playing her and the boat were on one take. The background is completely different. So this was taking that plate, tracking it in, and then having to recreate all of that hair because she had that beautiful,
Hmm.
like those wispy hairs. So all of that wispy hair stuff was fake.
Wow.
No.
It was like to match what the real hair was like on the actor. And so like basically we had a hard kind of a silhouette, and then through a combination of roto shapes, using those to mask out different colors and blend those in there, that's how we ended up creating those wispy hairs to put back over to make it look like, it was actually seamless.
Yeah, amazing. And it just looks like such a simple shot that you
does.
wouldn't even think about it all, like there was anything in this at all.
Yeah, but yeah, that entire background, there was a boathouse like like dead in the middle of the plate that she's actually on, and like the tree line was different, and like
Mhm.
there was more beach. So yeah, it was really drastic from what the finish shot ended up being.
Is it hard wrapping your brain around like parallax sometimes, like all the background moving different than the foreground? And
It can be, but you kind of have to go back to that onion, analogy to where if you break
right.
things down into like, what's happening in the far background, you solve that, then you go to the next layer in the midground, solve that, and then come and work your
Hmm.
way forward. It helps mitigate some of that, but
Okay.
I mean, but parallax can absolutely be a pain in the ass, especially when you have things like this where it's all basically green and
Yeah.
you're having to adjust and kind of compensate for that. So hopefully you get lucky and that sometimes the plate works with you, but other times you
Right.
go out to the bar afterwards.
Wow.
What
Awesome.
about this one?
So this one was another split screen comp. So this the directive was basically we had two plates, one with the younger version of the store owner, and the one where he's actually an older version of himself. And it was a crossfade into basically getting the plates in for the timing. But the kicker on that is the books. Um, each of the plates didn't have the same books in the same position.
Oh,
And the kicker is that we always work off like the studio or the directors, editors, producers, they always provide us with a reference. So um, another conversation about whether the reference actually helps or is just the plate, is another thing. But for this particular shot, the reference was just like they had these books and they had them in a certain position. The book on the far right, the Seabirds and the Eastern Seaboard,
hmm,
it was basically flush against the window pane. So once I got the crossfade of the two actors doing their thing and him putting the book down on the left and then the two in the middle, I had to rebuild everything on that lower right windowsill. So like, and then I also had to rebuild the actor's hands, putting him in the book because his
wow.
hands were actually doing different motions that didn't match the reference. And like, it's that kind of that minutia of the detail to where they wanted it specifically to match their reference of how his hands were moving to place the book. So it was me frame holding different chunks and then warping and manipulating those hands into into what was matching what they were asking for. So it was really really much more complicated than what it probably should have been, but again it sells the effect of like he's placing the book in there and it
Right.
sells what the motivation of the scene is. But yeah, it's all that stuff. So like, I mean, that particular shot that took me about 3 days just to rebuild that one little window section.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
But yeah, the age up stuff actually, this was actually really cool. 'Cause I mean, if you kind of like go back between this one and that previous one, even when she's animating, like, so there's a really cool tool called it's a Keen Tools Face Builder. You can create like a 3D mesh, and then you basically unwrap that as like a UV, like you would in Maya, and then you
Hmm.
can paint stuff on, and then you basically reapply it. Unfortunately, that tool didn't work, and so like it's amazing, but when it works, it's fantastic. But this one, the way that she was animating, and there was so many kind of things that we just couldn't quite track. So all of these age ups that I'm doing, they're all 2D effects. So I
Wow.
avoided 3D and CG completely on this one because and I wish this is the kind of thing that I wish I would have had the plate before to actually throw on the reel, but some companies are able to provide that. Some other ones are kind of like they don't want to deal with it. But her eyelids on this shot in particular, um, the directive was that because they have to move, so all I ended up doing was grabbing a lower eyelid off of the specified age range they were looking for and applying that. And then her upper eyelid, because it had wrinkles kind of from the practical makeup, it was just blending that in there to make it look like it was actually a whole thing. And then beyond that, it's just hair manipulation. So an overall kind of a light gray cast over the hair to kind of show that salt and pepper. But then like going in and individually rotoing and moving those hair strands to kind of finish and complete that look to where you're getting like a little bit of like the streaks.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
it's so much work, man.
amazing.
That's so much work.
But yeah, this one was basically take what I did in that, and they were like, age her up like 40 years. And I'm like, okay. So, but you know, it makes sense if you watch the movie and the story with where
you're like, you do realize she's 15, right? And you want me to make her look 50? Yes.
We had jokes about that. But yeah, but even with like, so the male actor, his character's name is Tate. So with him, it was like aging him up as well. But it's, because, we tend to, there's similar age ups for all of us, but some gender specific. So it was striking that balance between the two of them. But yeah, like I'm really proud of that work because de-aging's a thing. But like that was the first time I'd ever been like asked to actually physically age somebody up.
Yeah.
Wow. Would you think it's harder to de-age or age someone up, in your opinion?
Depends on how young you're trying to make somebody look. Like it's, and I don't want to shitbag on Marty Scorsese, but I mean, like, The Irishman, and Pacino, it's like I think they could have gone a lot softer on some of those techniques. But that's a whole nother area called beauty work that, I mean, for the most part, I think people realize that it touches everything. So, but with the de-aging process, kind of a really cool technique that I use a lot is you can actually break out pixels into wavelengths where you have like fine detail, which is like all your pores and your wrinkles and all that stuff. And then you can separate that out from just the color data. And so you can do what we call like you're painting on the frequency, but how you split that out, if you put a roto paint node in there, you retain the color data,
right?
But you just paint out like some wrinkles, and then you still have
like
those pores and that actually things that make skin look like skin. You can just like kind of soften those up to just minimize a little bit. Cause like, I mean, again, I don't want to shitbag, but it's like, there's a certain, movie theater that has a certain actor in their promos. And when you look at her, there's no texture on her face whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, it's just like Mojo, and the Red Giant Bull. It's like they set it to 9.5 on the Mojo.
I think we do something similar in audio where you just have a histogram of the waveform, and you can actually go in there and paint out different parts of the audio visually. Yeah. And it's very something you couldn't do with just the waveform itself. You can go in there and paint out a low sound or a click, and
that's
the Uncanny Valley is real. It's real in audio. It's real in visual effects.
That's why I like such a respect for sound editors and sound design, because I can't do it. Like it's horrible when I try, which I'm happy to pay somebody else to do it. But
yes, same.
The things that y'all can do in the voiceover and audio land, just that stuff that's amazing to me.
Yeah, incredible. Well, I mean, we're coming up on an hour right now. It doesn't feel like
didn't seem like it at all.
No, that was super fast.
Is there anything specific on your reel that you're really proud of that we haven't really delved into?
Ooh, I mean, I mean, we kind of like I think we crossed a good chunk of it. Yeah, because I mean, there's more stuff that I wish I could put on. My next reel is going to be more fun. Actually, there is a fun shot if you go back to the kid in the football helmet.
All right. Okay.
So just go forward. Yeah, that guy.
Right.
If you like frame it by frame it, we had to create the vomit for that movie. It was a movie called Home Team. It's one of Adam Sandler's produce his companies for Happy Madison.
Happy Madison,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, but like the sequence of this one is that Rob Schneider gives all these kids these like health bars before their game, and it makes everybody sick. So
Oh gosh.
yeah, and
Terrible.
it's disgusting if you watch it, but it's hilarious too. But like we had to remove vomit tubes because they had practical vomit, but then we had to
Oh.
create digital vomit on top of the practical vomit. And so
More
like,
vomit.
More vomit.
I mean, it's
What we
poltergeist,
need
it's
is
projectile.
more vomit.
Like,
I'm not seeing enough vomit.
yeah, so but I mean, the meetings were fun because it's like, oh, that's too yellow. No, that's too green. That's not chunky enough. We need more chunks. Like, add some cream corn.
Oh, geez.
Gosh.
So
It's hilarious.
yeah.
Who
So
puts cream corn in their protein bars? I mean, come
apparently
on.
everybody at because I figured out that like they love their vomit on those productions, so they are very particular about it.
It has a very consistency has to be right. The level amount of chunks has to be right. We
Literally.
actually have a document we're going to need you to read about it and sign here.
It's a big PDF. They just like, this is what our vomit needs to look like. Don't
Yeah,
make
references. You're like, I don't need references. I'm going to puke myself.
like, go out, eat all this stuff, and then do it, and then you'll see. Then you got your practical reference.
You have your reference. I need some plates of that.
Vomit plates.
Click,
Yes.
click,
Oh,
click,
geez.
click.
Yeah, I know one of our producers actually he just on his own time on the weekend. He just wanted to see what he could get with a practical result. So it's that standard, that vomit tube. But with him, he was throwing all that stuff into it, and like it just. I mean, you got, even though it wasn't vomit, you got queasy just looking at it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And we're sitting there, we're just like,
No, man. No, even just talking of thinking about it, it's the smell that kills me.
Oh,
Once
geez.
that hits my nose, I'm over. That's it.
oh
Done.
god, yeah, because
Ah,
the stories that I heard from our on-set soup on that one, I mean, because that one filmed down here in Louisiana, but like when they filmed on it, what they were using for the fake vomit, I mean, the field looked like just yellow. Like, and like somebody doused it in like Gatorade and Silly Putty, or
like St. Patrick's Day in Chicago went wrong.
Oh, gosh.
and it went wrong, and then it went sideways from the wrong.
Oh God.
Oh,
Whatever. So,
Oh.
but yeah, but I mean, so the story is really good, and like it's actually a cute movie too if you like sports movies. But
Yeah.
there was-
I like his movies too. They're always
Yeah.
something fun.
yeah, there is a scene where one of the kids actually slides through all the practical vomit into the end zone, and like it will give you a good idea of
And
what
he wins. Well, game over.
exactly. Like it gives you an idea of what you see of the rest of the field. And
It's like the
wow.
grease pig. They're trying to tackle him, but they can't because he's like a grease pig.
exactly. But yeah,
man.
it's a wacky profession some days. I know like one of the things that that I finished up on that Renfield movie was like one of the directors was like how creative like violence with blood. So if you like go back to like Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow, where
Mhm.
like everything's squirting Johnny in the face and it's like like that over the top.
Oh yes.
It was like a lot of what I was tasked with on that one early on was like, hey, do some creatively, like look dev, and like let's just see what how kind of like comedically funny we can get, like when somebody gets stabbed and the blood's coming out. So it's like weirdly enough, the EMT former life comes into play, with visual effects.
You're like, I know exactly what that looks like.
I do, and it's
Yeah.
I'll talk to my therapist afterwards, but
Oh,
it's very much that like
It's not just actors that need the therapist, it's
Yeah.
all the VFX artists are like,
yeah, they're like, oh, that thing, oh, give that to Brad, he knows what it looks like in real life, and I'll be like, but
yes.
Yeah,
Oh man, oh man.
it's such a wacky world, but I mean, I'm glad I get to wake up and do this every day. So it's a pretty amazing thing.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
And well, Brad, thanks so much for joining our show, for being a part of Entertainment Dudes, and
Yes.
all of you out there. What's up? We already saw some on your reel, but where's the best place to kind of follow with what you're doing and track with what you're working on and see what you're doing?
I need to get better about my updating my website, but it's just bradallenmoon.com.
Okay.
I have to put this current reel. I will do some sound design, so I'm sorry.
You should just use your mouth for all of it.
I'll do that, but then yeah, I'll finish this reel, then put this one on there. There's a couple more shots that I'm waiting on too that I want before I update the website. But yeah, I mean, the BradAllenMoon.com. It's got all of my art stuff is on that one, and it takes you right to the reel. But yeah, the company I work for is called Crafty Apes. Offices all over the U.S. and we pretty much touch all the big stuff, all the big kid toys. Like they're kind of known for the Marvel work and things like that. But they've been, is an office we've been working on since like back in Civil War, that kind of MCU stuff. So
right.
A lot of really cool properties and a lot of things I get to play on, then be like,
awesome,
not tell anybody about, because I'm like, I saw that 6 months ago. But yeah, so it's a dope company, a lot of really good people, and the industry too. It's like, I mean, you guys know, it's like if you get to be around other creatives, like,
yeah,
for the most part, occasionally you find somebody you don't want to play with, but like, there's a
by
lot
and large, pretty friggin' awesome people.
Yeah. Definitely makes the day, even like the longer days, it makes it easier when you got people you can just shoot the shit with while you're doing it, and just crack jokes with each other. So,
right. Entertainment News.